Yeah, it's interesting on all those species, at least the ones I'm familiar with, that have either the single hairs or patches. In general, the anterior face of the forecocci don't have too many other hairs. So it's not like these patches or these bristles are covered with other hairs and you have to dig for them. Usually, if you can see the anterior face of the front cocci, you'll be able to tell if those things are present or absent. But some of the patches aren't so conspicuous. You might have to fiddle with the specimen to catch the light just correctly to realize, oh, there is a small, dense, short patch of hairs on the front cocci. So it's really variable, but very useful at the species level in many cases.
All right, I made the mistake of leaving some hanging hases and onlys in the last one. So now I've cleared it and we'll look at it again. So has only one. These are, I think, important to see these kinds of things. Megachile pollicaris, which I don't think I have a specimen of, but more commonly are these patches here. And there's a bunch. Let's see if I can pull in I have an addenda identified. Let's see if I can get it to show its patch.
And sometimes the front legs can be, in the process of pinning or preparation, can kind of make seeing the cocci difficult if they're pressed right up against it. That's
yeah,
occasional issue.
Yeah. I mean, if we all were doing museum level preparation, this wouldn't be much of an issue, but most of us, particularly people doing ecological things, are not really doing a whole lot more than trying to get their specimens clean. And if that doesn't get well. All right, so we have a good specimen here. The problem is it's a little dark inside that area. And I'm going to try and spin this slowly. And then we'll bump up the light in there. So we'll orient here. So we're at our max. Here is the spine. So it's sticking up, can travel down it there. And then where we're looking for the CT would be right here, but this is really dark right now. So I'm going to up the light level on the specimen. And oops, I knocked it a little bit.
I want to let you know, for some reason, my chat shows that the meeting has stopped recording and saved the recording, but it also is not letting me restart it. So glad you guys are here. We will see if this technology, I'm able to resolve it.
Great. Okay. I'm just getting oriented again here. Okay, I'm going to escape and I'm going to bump up the light here a lot. Oops, that's the opposite. That may be possibly good. Everything else is blown out, but we want to see inside the specimen. Oh, I got to click in here. Okay. So I don't really see the CT. Here's the spine. The CT should be in there. Let's see if I can get any look inside that area to get a clear shot of the CT in this addenda. Well, I'm not sure on this specimen that this is going to be possible because it's so dark in there.
That's hard to see.
Yeah, I can't see anything going on. So, okay, well, we might revisit that with a couple other specimens as we travel along to see if we can find the CT that's visible. But I often have a hard time in the specimens that I get because we're washing and drying them, but we're not uncurling them to actually see the CT. A lot of them are often hidden. I'm just taking a quick look at some of these other specimens to see if anything particularly open on the dorsal segments. Yeah, they often, yeah, in general, the specimens tend to curl up. All right, so I'm not going to put any more effort or time into that. And I think I skipped over a question too. So we'll have to bring the light level back down. We moved over this one, which is critical. So legs, front basotarsus shape. So what we're doing is we're looking at the basotarsal segment. And a lot of times when we talk about dilated tarsal segments, a lot are involved, but it's often easiest just to focus on one segment. So we use the basotarsus and we compare its width to the width of the tibia prior to it. So unmodified. We'll go back to the area here and we look at, wait, sorry. That's something we might have, did we talk about it? Yeah, we did talk about that in the previous one. So it's just, this is in alphabetical order. So I'm not going to go revisit that again because we did it last week. So let's look at acellar distance. So the distance here from the edge of the lateral ocelli versus to the back to, so the distance between, here we can bring this up, the distance between versus to the back. So you have a variety of different categories. A lot of them are quite, where the distance between the ocelli are quite close. So distance between the lateral ocelli less. And you can see that most species are scored for that. And then some are roughly equal. So most of those are going to be scored for both possibly being less or about equal so that we don't have to guess so much. And then there's a few that are very useful where the distance between the lateral ocelli are greater than the distance to the back of the head. So let's go to the has thing and see who's involved with that. And go back here. Oops. Oh, now we're there. So I've got to turn these off. And we got to go to the head characters. And the ocelli is here. And if we look at only distance between lateral ocelli greater, we end up like Consina is the only one that only has that. A lot of others are probably scored for more than one thing. So there's our 7 in there that have been scored for that, as well as probably equidistant. Mike, I'll pull out a Consina. Do you have any notions about that character?
Yeah, I'd expand it a little. When you're looking at the top of the head, there's certain species that the distance from the upper corner of the eye to the back of the head can be useful, as well as the ocellar characters. And petulans is one of those that has a very, very narrow distance between the posterior upper corner of the eye and the back of the head. And in that case, sometimes the back of the head is real distinctly marked by a ridge-like or carina-like margin, but on others it's more sloping. So sometimes it's kind of, what is the back of the head exactly? So that's sometimes something you have to get used to.
Yeah, so Mike's right. So a lot of times so we, might call it the back of the head or the vertex or something like that. But if it's, sometimes it's very sharp and it's clear, okay, that's the back of the head. And other times it's got this very long bend to it. And then it's like, well, where am I measuring to? And that can be tricky. We'll pull up petulance too and take a look at that to see that character. I'm pulling up a consina. So now with the consina, what we're looking at is going to be the ocelli and the distance between. This is the only one where it is only scored for being greater. So if we look here, so the distance between the edges of the ocelli are clearly greater than the distance to the back of the head. And we'll have to, when we get to differentiating consina from apicalis and rotundata, we'll see if that actually helps with identification too. So pull that out. And a whole bunch of them are very distinctly way less. In other words, there's quite a distance to the back of the head. But let's pull petulance. We'll pull petulance and take a look at that character, and then we can, Mike, you can talk about it a little bit more in terms of what it's differentiating.
Well, and it's also useful in the females. In particular. I'm trying to remember now if the male has if it's as narrow in the male as it is in the female, but I think it is. But petulance is one of those that's very common, at least in the Midwest, and looks a lot at a glance like a Mendica or brevis or Texana. Kind of has that general appearance. But once you look more closely, it's quite different. But
yeah, it's for us here, it's at the edge of its range in Maryland. So we get a few records. I remember when I first started out getting the first known specimen in the state, and now I've got a handful, and sort of here and there, nothing, no particular pattern. And then to the south, I see more. So, oops, you're talking about this section from here to there.
Pretty much.
Okay. And so do you have like are you contrasting it with anything, or are you just saying, oh, it's narrower?
Narrow versus some other species. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, but you don't have necessarily, how people talk about, well, the ocelli as a measurement tool. So it's a straight comparison for you when you're saying, well, if you have two specimens, this distance is shorter.
Right.
In petulance.
And in the female, it's much narrower even, and it's hardly any longer than the diameter of an ocellus. So it's, in the female, it's more striking than it is in the male.
And most other species have a
much
substantially
broader.
larger.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll revisit that one, I'm sure, too. All right. So now back to the major characters. We're in the guide itself. So bristles. Okay, now we're getting to the true rim issue. So we're talking about the true rim. So you're going to flip the specimen over. We might just use this petulance here as an example. You're going to flip the specimen over to look at the true rim, and then you are going to do something that, again, took me quite a while to be comfortable with, is find any teeth that are along that rim. So sometimes there can be just two teeth, and sometimes there can be 4 teeth. And usually we talk about them either being lateral, so very far on the edge of the rim, at the edges, or I don't know what is the other one, the sublateral, or fairly close to the center, but also parallel. So let's pull up petulans, which
Question. So I just got an email back about the Acelli thing. So just whenever you have another one up, can you just point out as we go through them and look at narrow and wide ones, can we just spend some time as they come up?
Okay. Yeah. You mean the distance between contrast between the distance between the Acelli and the back of the head?
Yeah, the characteristic you were just talking about.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can revisit that. Okay, back to, so now we're in the has, and we're looking at, what were we looking at? We were looking at the abdomen, yeah, the rim on T2. So we want to go to abdomen characters, and we're looking at the true rim, and we're going to look at, so rim smooth without any teeth, and then you have something with teeth here. So I'm pretty sure petulans has teeth, but it may it's yeah. So actually, you know what? This is a good example of something. So we're going back to the guide, and we're looking at the true rim teeth, and here, and you can see that of the characters, there's 13 scored for having teeth and 4 scored for not. And that's an indication that not all the specimens have been investigated as to whether they have teeth or not. And we've only scored them for specimens that we know have one or the other character. So that means that if you chose, like, for example, 4 here, you're not going to get 4 because not every specimen is been investigated. You're going to get the 4 where there is no teeth, and anything that was not included in this other character. So because that's conservative, right? So if you just included the 4, then a species that has not been scored for this at all would drop out potentially, but it may also have not had its rim smooth and not have a tooth on its rim. So again, when we don't have enough information for a species to figure out whether it has the character or not, it stays in the guide. So that's what's going on here. You can see there's 35 in there, but we've clicked a button that has only 4 things scored for it. And that's why we often go back here to the has button to see what are specimens that have been scored for not having any teeth along the rim. And so here's a set of these: Apicalis consina, Georgica, and rotundata. I think probably you can see here these 3 Apicalis consina and rotundata look like little mini mendicas and brevis things, but mendicas and brevis have teeth and these do not. And this is that group that have really nice characters in the subgenus. What is the subgenus again? Something with an E?
Eutricherae.
Yeah. In that subgenus that have the white hair bands underneath the scopal hairs. But that is not obvious in the males. So I'm going to actually go to brevis.
So, but it sounds like to do that as an only when you're in there seems pretty dangerous. Like, especially if we have characters that haven't, like, or we have specimens that haven't been scored, unless you're at a point where you're trying to narrow it down or you're a more experienced user.
So the reason to use the only is not really for identifying an unknown specimen as much as it is identifying which species have a particular character. Okay, so in this case, these 4 we know have been scored for having rim smooth without any teeth or angles, and have only been scored for that, not scored for, in this case, both characters. So that means we're pretty confident if we pick up one of these specimens and look at it, there will not be any teeth or angles. So for teaching purposes, that's really useful. For learning about characters, like if you're going to a museum or something else, that's also really useful. If I tried to do that in the guide, remember what happened is I clicked on rim smooth without any teeth, only 4, but 35 showed up. So which one of those has actually no teeth? We don't know. That's why I shifted to the only, so that I can show you guys a set of species that don't have any teeth on the true rim. It doesn't mean that the species, so we have these 4 which show up in here too. It doesn't mean that the other species, the 31 other species, may do or do not have teeth. It just means that we have no information, right? So we have to leave those species in the guide, right? Because they haven't been scored for either of these.
Right.
Does that make
I
sense?
was just trying to make sure that there was clarity that that isn't particularly ones that have that super low, don't necessarily be one to, like, hang your hat on for it not not being something else that just hasn't been scored.
So the story behind this is that originally this character was not in the guide, and then we added it later, but I didn't have specimens for many of these species, or I didn't feel like looking back through and determining whether they had teeth or not. The key was that, in particular, the separating the 3 species of whatever the subgenus that Mike just mentioned that I've currently forgotten, of Rotundata and Consina and Apicalis, from things that look like them, but actually are bigger. But that's not a great character, like Brevis, Mendica, and so forth, because they don't have any teeth. That's a great general character. And so that is helpful there, but it could be more helpful for all these other things if we scored them. See what I'm saying? So this is useful, but unlike a lot of these others where every single specimen is scored for having these characters, this one was not. Now, someone can send us that information and we'd be happy to add it into the guides. But right now, we're not. And for teaching purposes, I'm using the only to figure out what the heck ones don't have any angles or teeth and which do. So I do know, because we use them to, at least to some extent, in separating Brevis and Mendica, although there's better characters. But in several circumstances, we're going to use these teeth. So we're going to spend a little time looking for the teeth and at the teeth and how to find them, because in species level ID, it's often useful. Okay, let's go all the way down, find our specimen. So here is Brevis, our friend. Brevis, very common species. And we are going to go, and right now we're basically looking almost directly straight into the back end. I'm going to bump up the light here a little bit, and I'll go with 100, maybe a little bit more. Maybe a little tiny bit more light. 300. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, back in. Oops, darn it. here. Okay, so let's orient. There's different ways to approach, but at minimum, looking straight into the face of T6 is a good start. So here are the tergites up this way, the sternites are down that way. Here's some genitalia just peeking out of the gap between the sternites and the tergites. So the genitalia peeking out, that's a good indicator, right? So just above that is going to be the true rim. More orientation here would be that this is a little bit difficult to see because we're looking at it straight on. This is the flange or the projecting ridge, not the real rim of T6. So T6 is running through here. Here in this species, we have, like we talked about last time, a whole bunch of oppressed white hair. So that's a good character for this particular group. Then there's this big flange, which we don't see super well, but here's the notch, right? Here's that notch in it that this particular group has. Brevis has it for sure. And then this area to this area, genitalia are a good indicator of where the true rim is. This area to this area is still T7, okay? And now this is where we need to find some teeth along this rim here. And this is where people, you know, sort of pull their hair out. So we're going to shift the perspective a bit, but genitalia and notch center on the middle. So we know that there should be a lateral tooth and a, Mike, what do you call it? Sublateral? Something. And there's two teeth, roughly there, roughly there.
Submedian.
Submedian, yeah. So, and you can kind of see, imagine this one. So this is a submedian tooth, and then the other one is hidden here. But I'm going to shift now, and I'm going to turn this over. So, oh look, I can change the magnification with my mouse, and see if we can see that better. So, because in Brevis, you can look at the relative distances of the teeth, and sometimes that's, well, it can be useful to tell Brevis from Mendica and Texana. I'm going to talk about these teeth while I'm looking here a little bit more.
Yeah,
Mike.
We use the word tooth or teeth, to describe so many projections. And I think in this case, these are really subtle. These aren't big pointed things sticking out. These are fairly subtle and can easily be concealed by goo or other goop that's on the hind end. And so they can be a challenge to see. But Sam's got a specimen here. I think they'll show up fairly well.
We'll spin it some more too. Here's your notch. We're now looking underneath that parallel rim. There's that notch. There's the genitalia. This is the submedian tooth right there. And the other is still kind of hidden. I'm going to turn this more. This is not a big tooth, but it is there. And I never really not see them unless they're just simply hidden. So I'm going to spin it again. And sometimes, so for example, Mendica and Brevis, one way of telling them apart is the relative proportional distance of those two teeth. So, and that's how I believe Mitchell, mostly, who was a Megachile expert, had it in the guide, and I can't tell you how many specimens I spent worrying about that. When we get to telling them apart, I'll tell you. Well, actually, I'll tell you. I use the band of hair on T6 6 as the main indicator.
T5, I think.
T5, yeah, as you know, being present. Then I do all this nonsense down here. Because it's even if, you know, Mike and I have a lot of experience, so we can find it more easily, it's still, you know, takes some work to get in there. All right, just
that's
orientation.
That's showing up.
There's the notch. And we're kind of looking right into where the genitalia are in here. And these are the sternites back in this direction, and we're looking up and we're trying. I may need more light. I think I should shift this up a little bit more. Actually, there's the notch. We're looking at the notch in the rim there, and there's one tooth, so that's a sublateral tooth, and the other tooth is right there. So those are the two sublateral teeth. And then ignore my phone. And then sadly, the far lateral teeth are not really visible, but they would be here. And when Mitchell talks about ID things, he's talking about the relative distance between here and here. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike,
No, you're
versus
right.
here and here.
Right.
And if I remember right, and I really don't use this very much right now, it's wide in brevis, and this is relatively short in mendica. Do I have that right?
I think you do.
Yeah. So when you're using Mitchell, you will be frustrated because right now we're having a hard time seeing these other teeth here, and you'll spend a lot of time angling and whatnot. But those are the teeth, and maybe we'll look at another specimen at another point.
Hey Sam, it's Matt. That upper tooth, can you see that? It looks like I'm seeing a distal tooth on the upper. Go up into the hairs there, just on the very edge of the image. It looks like you can see it.
This one here?
No, on the other side of the B.
I'm going to say probably not. Let's bring it in. Because it's probably out of the picture, the lateral tooth. My guess would be that in this shot, it was out of the picture. Let's see if we can see anything. So my notion is that could be it there. I'm not confident. This is as high a mag as we can get on this. That could be a tooth in there. I'm not sure. It would be some, Mike, is that what your impression? Somewhere in there is probably the tooth?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. So this is the kind of thing where you're just rocking the specimen back and forth with your fingers, looking for this darn other tooth. And I don't know about you, Mike, but I almost never use this character anymore. But every once in a while, I will be flipping over a specimen, and some of these teeth can be quite a bit larger than what we're looking at now, and that alerts me like, oh, I'm looking at a different species because the teeth are some kind of different shape. Also, this same area for the, we'll get into it probably later, the Musida gemula group is got all kinds of complexities. So it's not a bad thing right now to spend some time flipping these things over, but in general, we don't spend much time. But one way to separate out from this brevis group, the group, and I don't know what the split is for you, Mike, in your key, the also common rotundata, and then lesser common, it's con subgenera specific things, the consina and apicalis, is that they don't have teeth.
Right.
What do you do? What's your split on that?
Well, also the males do have, we talked about it, the fovea, the females have, the males have, the males also have that. And so if you're using apicalis does, and rotundata, and consina, the males have that same funny thing
What-
that,
Isn't it sometimes more difficult to see? I can't remember now.
it is, but I think
Okay.
once you're used to seeing it with the females,
You can find them in the
yeah,
males too.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And Brevis has nothing like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
So
And they're
speaking
smaller.
of Consina, and also as a time check, I am in no rush, but
Okay.
to be aware of that. Jean, we have a question in the guide. Do Megachile Consina and Pusilla currently key to Consina?
Yeah. So Pusilla is a name that probably should, but I've been a little conservative on this, replace Consina in the guide. So there was a revision of this subgenus from Europe. And all three of those are invasive species, so they're not native to the region. And Apicalis and Rotundata really were not involved in any name changes that we have to be concerned about. But Consina, the notion is that there is both Consina and Pusilla probably in North America. They didn't really that wasn't the point of the paper, but they sort of casually mentioned that they think that most of the specimens are Pusilla. That the differences between Pusilla and Consina, which are both valid species, are really subtle. And I've always noticed that there were sort of two types of Consina around on the East Coast. And so I'm a little unsure. Probably the more conservative thing is to call them Pusilla now. But I haven't changed the guide at this point. But that's the story on Consina.
Fantastic. Well, it is 2:00. Perhaps we should consider saying goodbye for today.
Oh my God, that went fast.
It did, didn't it?
Yeah.
I agree.
And we really just went through, well, we're now finished the major ones, and I think we can probably very easily shift to Mike's key if he has some of those things available, or we have a lot of species pair things and for next week.
okay.
And then other these characters that we didn't talk about, which are not that many. See, the guide is filled with Georgica versus other things. Then we can get into that.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, let's see if this recording took, and fingers crossed.
Oh, Mike, while we're disappearing, I have so like in the guide here, I have under Georgica, this was a question. It has a large oval black spot on a chunk of the inside of the basotarsus. But I'm wondering if that isn't Inimica that I've confused the two with. Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I don't think Georgica has that.
So I think that must be, and I probably confuse Inimica as having that black dot.
Yeah, because Georgica's can be as big as Inimica male. So,
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, if you could take a look, that'd be good, and then I'll get rid of it, because it was like, oh my gosh, look at that great big black dot there.
So is Georgica
that's a great character.
Is Georgica common? Is Georgica common over there?
Georgica is common as you go south. So it's around, a little bit, but it's not super common. Of the, the things without spines on the coxa, that group of resiny things, it's one of the, Exilus and Campanuli are super regular, and the others are not. But anyway, I'm now thinking that maybe that character goes with Intermis, or Inimica.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could take a look, that would be good, because then I need to take that out, because I put that in relatively recently, but I think I was in error there.
Okay, I'll check.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, all right.
All right.
See you
Bye now.
soon.